Welcome to today's episode, where we explore how to develop talent and capabilities that drive innovation in organization through exploration, experimentation, and continuous learning. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, Danny.
We had many of our listeners sending us text and contact us because of an episode that we did talking about culture of innovation that really resonated with a lot of people. So we wanted to go deeper in that and trying to understand how to build the human capital necessary to have a successful system of innovation. So let me ask you something. Do you like basketball?
I enjoy watching it. I tried to play it at one point in my life.
But are you a fan of the Detroit Pistons, for example?
No, I am not a fan of the Detroit Pistons.
Okay, but you have a story. You have a story.
I do have a story. There's a reason I'm not a fan of them. It was because it's related to this story. So I actually didn't like the style of play of the Detroit Pistons. They were a very muscular basketball team, meaning that if you weren't a Pistons fan, then you considered them to be fouling and playing dirty a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So they had a style of basketball that made them a dominant team, so much so in the early 2000s that they were in the conference finals 6 times. They've won championships. And they have some players who were extraordinarily successful and well known and great sort of stars for the NBA as a whole. The challenge there was that the game changed and the Pistons didn't change. And I think this is when we think about cultivating a learning from investment culture, so a culture that actually is continuously learning. This is a good cautionary tale. And we can look at sport, we can look at other organizations that have failed to kind of keep their eye on the ball and to see that the ball is going somewhere where we currently aren't. So this Pistons story, really you could look at it in terms of there was financial impact. Certainly their ticket revenue dropped significantly as the team started underperforming, right? So fans like to support winning teams. They might support listening to the radio or watching on TV, but they're not necessarily going to show up to the arena unless they feel like there's a winning product out on the floor that's competitive in the current game. And that decline showed a drop, from about 22,000 seats being sold out in their arena to about 15,000 seats by 2010. So a fairly significant drop. And there's kind of an implied financial metric there, but it's bigger than that. There's a social metric as well, which is said the larger community of Detroit didn't feel inclined to show up together and cheer their team on. And then suddenly there's a little bit of a disbenefit to being a Detroit Pistons fan, right? Yeah. So there's like a social disbenefit to that, which is they feel kind of antiquated. And Detroit as a community already had a little bit of this, the world is passing us by, and now the world was passing the game by as well. So you got a social capital impact, and then I'd say a reputation capital impact as well, which is the brand itself of the Detroit Pistons diminished, and building that back is not an easy task. And if you don't have a coaching staff, if you don't have an executive leadership team in your organization that says, hey, we're going to be watching where the game is going and anticipating where the game is going. And we're going to recruit and we're going to change our strategies to ensure that we can be ahead of that or meet the game where it is. Then you're going to fall behind. And it's the same in business. It's the same in government. It's the same in society.
So it's the same. You mean that if companies and organizations don't upskill and reskill their human capital to adapt to these new realities, at the end they're going to fall behind. Is that right?
Yeah, I think upskilling and reskilling is an important concept. I think it's important in the now side of the organization, right? Because you might introduce a new piece of technology into a manufacturing process, or like how do we integrate AI or robotics into manufacturing? So as a Detroit example, you want to figure that out. And you're going to need to skill your people up, and you're going to need to train them to do that. But there's also the investing in your organization and your people so that they are continuous learners, that they are incentivized to experiment, they're incentivized to have and test hypotheses, that they're incentivized to say, hey, I thought something was going to happen that didn't, right? That there was an unexpected outcome People often get punished in their organizations for unexpected outcomes. Here, if you're cultivating a learning culture, you actually want people to put their hands up and say, hey, I was wrong. Mm-hmm. And here's what I learned from it. There's this kind of famous alliteration in the innovation space called fail fast, right? So you hear this fail fast idea. And we've taken issue with this over the years because we think in general, people don't want to fail. It's hard to get people excited about failing, fast or slow or medium, right? But if you sort of step back and say, what's the intention of that saying is try something, right? Have a hypothesis, test it, and don't worry about being wrong, right? In fact, celebrate being wrong as long as you learn from it. So the idea, rather than fail fast, I'd say let's learn fast. Right? Okay. So how do we do things that allow us to learn quickly? And then you want to look in your organization, you want to say, it's back to that platform discussion we had, right? Have we put in place a set of values and a vision and defined our purpose in a way that's inclusive of innovation, that's inclusive of curiosity, that's inclusive of learning, that's inclusive of people who ask the hard question, not just give the fast answer, right? And importantly, are we capturing the knowledge that's being gained from this learning? Are we sharing it widely across the organization rather than treating it like proprietary information? And are we giving people the tools to do this work? Are we actually giving them the systems and tools that are required to be successful at learning? We have an example of that in our small bet builder, where people can define an innovation opportunity. They can list their most important assumptions. They can design bets for each assumption. They can capture what they're learning from investment is. They can capture the implications. So there's a tool that says, this is not only something we encourage you to do, this is something we expect you to do. That's going to shift the culture.
So it is like you're already pay rent for the creativity of your people that you call salary. Yeah. Use it.
Yes.
Use it wisely because you're already paying for that.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond of just asking for people to have ideas. It's much more than that. You need a discipline system to capture those ideas and make something happen with that. Yeah. And you need to build this culture where people is actually willing to learn and you actually help them to do that, even to fail.
Yeah.
Is this think one concept that you were part of help you to frame that your learning culture? Or how that evolved for you?
Sure. So within the think wrong methodology, one of the practices is bet small, right? And move fast is another practice. So how do we right size an experiment so it doesn't expose any of our important forms of capital to too much loss? That is, can we afford to take the next step to learn the next thing we need to learn? So that's the idea behind a small bet. Does the next step represent affordable loss? So if we are wrong, we haven't somehow put the organization at risk. And then moving fast is both leaning into the expertise and the experience of the team we've assembled, and then sharing openly what we're learning so we accelerate the progress of the entire organization. There's I think, a failed model that's not only hurting organizations, but it's hurting entire economies and nations, which is that knowledge is power. And so people become very proprietary about what they've learned. And what that's doing is slowing our progress. It's slowing our ability to actually make progress on really important challenges. And this learning, this LFI culture, this learning from investment culture, shares openly, knowing that will accelerate all parties and leans into some confidence that we're bringing something unique and special to this. So while everybody might be operating on a platform of shared knowledge, we've got some unique perspective or some unique technology or some unique capability that's going to allow us to do something special with it.
So in our last episode, we talked about the Fantastic Five. So if you want to build this system of innovation, here are 5 things that you can do to start. If you want to transform your human capital, if you want to help your people to actually have this learning culture, where to start?
Well, I think making an investment in training is important. So giving them the skills, like you said, I think giving them the tools and then giving them the frameworks to operate within. So I think all of those are important. And again, you could sort of choose the place. I'd say if I was going to try to move a team forward or give an organization a head start on this, I would really focus on the next development process, and I would focus on the decision-making criteria, right? Because if you focus there, you're going to give people the opportunity, taking an innovation all the way through that cycle, making decisions and having them generate the information, the data that's required to make those decisions. You're going to give them a real hands-on experience with both the tool set and the know-how required to create impact.
Thank you, Greg. That wraps up our discussion about LFI culture. So join us in our next episode as we explore how to, instead of budgets, have funds for innovation. Now, go out and make next happen.